Okay.
Let's see, I
think we're more or less set up. So
hello
hello everybody. Hopefully you can actually see me and my guest Adam. If you don't know, I'm Rick with Shrimply Explained. I like shrimp and science. And Adam, would you like to give a quick introduction?
Sure. Yeah. I've been breeding freshwater shrimp for far too long. I got into this hobby a little over a decade ago. I was a little kid. We had a big 75-gallon tank, bred some mollies, and then I had 40 tanks by the time I got into high school. I started a business in high school with it. Kind of carried it into college, helped pay for college, pushed me through mechanical engineering. Is what I got my degree in. And then I kind of kept my head down, got my degree. I haven't been, as active on any, community groups or anything since then, and scheduled to finish my master's here in a couple months. So I'm finally starting a new business, and so you can see all the tanks around me. Just moved into my first house, and I'm super excited. Yeah, I got a lot of, more of the industry side experience now, running a business, doing it for a while. The importing shrimp game a lot. Home breeding, especially neocaridinias, right? All of your reds, blues, blacks, yellows. Just haven't delved into caridinia in quite that fashion. But, there's always room for another couple fish rooms, right?
I know. It seems like you're. Well, I think you were saying you have about 3 rooms that are going to be set up for fish rooms, along with another room at your dad's house that has more tanks. But I wanted to just get in here. So you mentioned mollies, and so you're selling those. It sounds like through college. But then you've been actually importing shrimp from various, mostly like Southeast Asian countries, for how long now?
Yeah, I probably started that as soon as I could drive. So it would have been about junior year of high school. I was buying fish and shrimp online and had them delivered to my door. But to do real importing, at least in Phoenix, I'm from Arizona, to do it here, it makes more sense to fly them into Southwest Cargo. You can get them delivered by FedEx to your door, but the price per unit goes so far out the door, it doesn't even make sense. So as soon as I had my first car, I started importing. And so I was doing about probably 2 coolers every 2 weeks for most of the way through high school, and I probably moved it up to 3 or 4 coolers a week from a couple different sources. Most of them direct from farm, which is kind of rare. A lot of people tend to go through transshippers. It's more of the common way, like the true wholesale. I kind of backdoored my way through because I used them as retail, but it was super cool. I've stopped importing since probably somewhere in the neighborhood of a year ago now, give or take. And so now I'm focused just on breeding everything. Again, I got neighborhood of 45, 50 tanks probably now at my dad's house. And so I still go over there and I still keep up on those ones, but I'm just keeping my breeding stock there as I set up a couple hundred fish tanks here at my new house. And then I have a plan to migrate everything over.
Yeah. And how many of those tanks are actually like shrimp?
There's shrimp in every tank. Gotcha. Probably only 10 of the 50 are probably dedicated shrimp tanks. I tend to do more group colony community type style breeding. I just like producing kind of both ends, right? I get now I kind of specialize in fancy guppies, so I have high-end guppies and high-end shrimp, and both of them being produced in the same tank they work well together, so it's nice.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited to see exactly how your setup actually comes together. That'll be really fun. But I know you've got a ways to go to set up, again, the 100+ tanks in your house here. So looking forward to that. I mean, you've done some selling, and as far as I understand, you're also kind of the local guru that any of your friends who have aquarium issues are going to go to for help, right? And so you've worked with a lot of people on their fish tanks, or their shrimp tanks, their planted aquascapes, because I know you know a lot about plants too. So that's going to be really fun to get into. But we are going to be focusing today for the people who are watching live. Thank you so much for showing up. We're going to be checking out common aquarium mistakes, or common mistakes that many new shrimp keepers make. And then Adam's going to tell us a little bit more also about the industry, what he's learned from importing, and how that might affect how you handle either your purchases as well as how you might acclimate shrimp to your tank and what you might have to expect with imported shrimp. So Adam, if you want to start us off here, I know we both brainstormed a couple things for like the common mistakes. What would be the first one on the list for you?
So, to me, the biggest mistake, and there's a bias, right? This is a big bias of me. My number one mistake I find that people that I've helped have made is they tend to feel like tap water is savable. And the bias here is that I'm in Phoenix, Arizona. My water comes out of the tap between 600 to 1200 TDS. It swings wildly throughout the year. They add crazy amounts of different things. Our water's high in stuff like arsenic. We have lots of heavy metals in our water. Phoenix water is very well known as not being kind of the greatest. And I know lots of other cities and people I've helped have the same issue, right? Las Vegas, Minneapolis, I got family out there I've helped. Places where you just got much harder water than average. Somewhere like, Washington, where the water comes out of the tap better than my RO does, right? So, the number one issue that I've run into is people think tap water is just good to go, or that they can tweak it somehow. And so for me, coming at it from more of a scientific method, anytime you can standardize something and come up with a baseline, you're way better off, right? So if I'm going to call my friend in Florida or my family in Minnesota or the neighbor across the street who's setting up a goldfish tank or something, all three of those people I can help if I tell, okay, you need to start with 0, right? Start with RO, start with distilled, right? If you have an 8-gallon beta tank, I mean, Walmart sells gallons of distilled water. Like, let's start with 0, right? You don't need to go invest in a huge RO unit. I know that the people that are hopefully listening to this are probably already banging their heads against the wall going, of course, I already have my $10,000 RO system. But to any of those of you out there watching that you're using tap water and you're seeing some success, that is awesome. And I've seen tons of success using tap water. I'm not knocking tap water necessarily. What I'm saying is that I would for sure try out using something with a baseline. You'd actually be surprised at some of the new stuff you didn't know that you could keep. For the longest time, I thought I just was bad at certain types of plants. I thought I was just bad at certain types of shrimp. And I wasn't. My water was. So, tap water kills me, especially just my area is bad overall in general more than other people's.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on tap water?
Well, could you tell from the water parameter testing that your tap water was bad right off the bat, or was it kind of a hidden issue that took a while to solve?
So nowadays, I'd say you could find it pretty quick. I mean, I would never recommend somebody start a Neocaridina shrimp tank with imported shrimp at 800 TDS. It's just a bad start. If you're buying from somebody who you know what parameters they bred in, or you know that the shrimp could take a higher TDS load, or if you know the country of import origin that you're buying from, certain countries tend to have certain types of parameters. We can get into that later if we want to. But if you know enough to feel comfy using high TDS water, and I don't by any means advocate that TDS is the best measurement, but as a super rule of thumb, newbie type, stick it in, give me a number. If you see that number really, really high and you don't know what you're doing, start with 0. It's not going to be, you're fighting an uphill battle. And it's funny, people get kind of defensive about the whole TDS thing, right? Like the saltwater people figured this out a decade and a half ago. You can't find somebody who's a serious reefer that doesn't have an RO unit. Like they all do. They all have it plumbed in. A lot of them have it on auto top off. Like it's pretty sweet what they have going. And in freshwater, it's just the easier part of the hobby, and easier turns into purely neglectful or just, this other guy got by, but you don't realize that the shrimp that you're buying can definitely not get by.
I mean, it depends a lot. I don't know if you got the chance to look at like my recent remineralizer video, but we went into that a lot in terms of trying to figure out like what problems having like purified or remineralized water can solve, because it can be difficult to know what problem is being caused by your tap water versus just unhealthy shrimp. So I am really curious and find out what percentage of tap water in the US is like not suitable for shrimp. Like I would guess that if the parameters are in range, probably like 75% of it would be pretty good. And then there might be more that unfortunately it has various issues, either a mineral imbalance, that other 25% has some kind of invisible issues that might need to be solved. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I agree with you for the most part. I mean, to me, I guess I'm just addressing my own bias, right? Like, if I had to answer this honestly, and somebody asked me like, "Hey, could you come over and help me set up a shrimp tank?" Like, I'm interested in starting a Neocaridina tank. Maybe I've done a little bit of research so far. If they told me like, "Yeah, I really want to start using Phoenix tap water," I'd say, "Dude, I don't know that I can help you." Like and seriously, I'm not even joking. Like, I'm busy. I got a lot of stuff going on, and I don't have time to help you fail. Like, go try that on your own. Like I did. Like, I started with tap water, and I tried for years. I bought shrimp from LRB Aquatics. I bought it from Flip Aquatics. I bought shrimp from this guy down the street who said he was breeding them in tap water, and he was flipping them. Mike Coleman. I bought them from all sorts of places that said they were bred in America, and maybe they were. And back then, it wasn't like I was brand new, right? I had 30 fish tanks for a couple of years by that point. I may have been young, but I knew what I was doing. I was keeping lots of other things that were hardy and things that weren't hardy. Like, I had really nice angelfish. I had discus. I had stuff that was like, okay, you put a little bit of work to figure out how to do that in Arizona tap water, breeding German blue rams and stuff like that. But Neocaridina, I would tell people probably start with, I like your number. You kind of ratioed it out. Like 25% of people could have issues. I think that statement is probably correct. And if you phrase it like that, 75% of you could have no problems at all. And so, if you're just going to buy a group of shrimp and, those are, not bad odds, right? But I think anything you can do to just mitigate risk is a good thing. I think it's a cheap mitigation too. For, probably absolutely. Under $20, you can buy remineralizer and the water. And you immediately set yourself up for success. So that's my advice to people out there that are listening. Even if you've seen success in other difficult to keep things, you'd be surprised what you can do with some RO water and some remineralizer, because now you have control, right? Now you can say, I want to hit this parameter. I want to hit these ratios, right? You can now play with it and you can tweak it, especially if you're making your own remineralizer, which we can get into someday.
Yeah, I know. I'd love to. So the tip is basically to use remineralized water if possible, since you just never know what's in tap water. And I definitely agree. It gives you the best control. I know it is a little bit more expensive, and so it's something to think about. And there are definitely situations where the tap water may work perfectly well, but that is a fantastic tip to just make sure that you have the best chance of success going into it. Along those same lines is where I'd kind of bring in my first tip, which is to really understand the water parameters that matter, right? So many fish keepers come into it and they just don't think about GH and KH. And so that's something that I talk about on my channel a lot. Just understanding the basics of what the minerals are, how they might be playing a role in your tank and for your shrimp health, and then obviously how KH comes into play, carbonate hardness, how it manages pH, and how you can use other options like a buffering substrate to replace it. And that is, KH is not really, it's not necessary for shrimp, but it can be very useful in certain setups. Like, I do see a common myth thrown around that KH is necessary for shrimp molting just because their shells are made of a lot of calcium carbonate. And as far as I've seen, that doesn't really hold up. Like, we can see you've talked with me about how some of the importers keep their shrimp, their Neocaridina, in 0 KH water. And what they're doing to maintain the pH is basically just continuously cycling new water in. And then that's going ahead and maintaining that pH rather than worrying about having that carbonate hardness, and the shrimp molt just fine in that situation. So understanding
I have something to add to that, by the way.
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
I think the way I would put that to somebody who may be less experienced, and not that I know that anybody in this one is, because we might be just talking to people that are way better experts than we are, and we're just preaching to the choir here. But I would say that shrimp don't need KH. Neocaridina shrimp do not need KH in their water. You need KH in their water. That's what I would say. It
in
helps
a closed
you
system
a little bit. Yeah, it stops the fluctuation. Usually we're keeping shrimp in such small tanks that you want a little bit of KH to protect yourself, right? It's the buffering capacity. Most people cannot keep enough water flowing through a 10 or 20 gallon tank to make that happen. So for me, when I breed them, I always make sure I have a little bit of KH because I like sleeping better at night knowing that I didn't sneeze in the wrong room and the pH swung.
It makes everything easier if you understand what its role is, how to make sure that you control it in your system as it's needed, right?
Totally.
So that's fantastic. I did want to quickly hit the question we've gotten chats from K. Jude Stevens and Barebottom Branton. Thank you both for popping in and actually saying something in the chat. We love to see you. So she wanted to talk about like aging water. So can we discuss that really quickly here? What's your thought on aging water? I'm guessing she's talking about for water changes. Do you think you need to age water before putting it in the tank?
Sure. That's a good question. I'd start off with, are we using tap water or not, right? So if your purpose of aging water is purely to gas off chlorine, I would say that it is necessary. If you've pushed it through carbon block filtration and you're no longer measuring chlorine or chloramine on your output, I would say that you're aging your water before a water change is not necessary. The only time that I would harp on somebody that it is completely necessary is if you are making your own remineralizer and you are worried about the actual correct amount of each part being dissolved. For example, there's different parts of remineralizers that dissolve at different rates. Most off-the-shelf ones are very stable, that they just do a good job. You could basically forget about it and mix it into your tank and not see problems. I've done that accidentally before. I don't do that, but I've done it. But if you're playing with your own, like gypsum salt, by the way, and Epsom salt dissolves so much faster than gypsum. And so as you blend different types of stuff that dissolves at different rates together, having water age in that capacity can just help you. But for the traditional purposes of aging water for the sake of, I've seen a handful of different reasons people age water. A couple of them don't really hold any scientific validity to me, I guess. Like the water itself, you can get a little bit of swings and parameters. I definitely would not say that this needs to be a, super, super well thought out thing. For example, my automatic water change system, the room behind me, so all around me are a whole bunch of tanks. The room behind me is going to have 78 plumbed 20-gallon long fish tanks together, all on one centralized system for breeding. And primarily it will be breeding Neocaridina shrimp and guppies. And in that system, I feed that with RO. So I have a centralized, 150-gallon reservoir to feed pure RO in. That water takes about, 8 to 12 hours to fill up in there. And as it does so, in some sense, it's sitting there. That water's already gone through carbon block filtration. There's no chlorine at that point.
Sure.
And I do remineralize basically right before I do it. I give it enough time to dissolve. And so I'll put in my fans there for, 30 minutes to an hour to, truly mix the water. But beyond that, I don't age water for what I do. And I haven't heard of anybody struggling that did not do it. You know what I mean? Like I've seen a lot of Flip Aquatic stuff where he ages his water. I've seen older aquarium co-op videos where he talked about some of the benefits of it. But what are your thoughts? I'm curious.
Yeah, no worries. So I do see like Caridina breeders mentioning it sometimes. And I've always been a bit curious about that because whenever I add in my remineralizer, it seems like it pretty much dissolves as much as it's going to within a matter of minutes. And I'm using a powdered one. I have to stir it in for a bit. But then if I leave it, the parts that aren't dissolved are not going to dissolve overnight. And the TDS doesn't change drastically for me. So I personally don't really bother with aging my water. I put the remineralizer in, I mix it up as much as I can, and then I'm going to put it in the tank within probably 10 minutes or so. I could see like it's not going to change the pH really if you're waiting. It might. So the pH is going to fluctuate with RO water drastically based on whether it's absorbing CO2 or releasing CO2. And so that can be a big issue. And you just can ignore pH whenever you're thinking about RO water. But so I don't really see the point of aging as well, unless it is to get rid of the chlorine gas, which your dechlorinator for tap water is going to do anyway. And so I really don't see the point of aging water for the most part. I'd love to hear if you, so KJ Stevens, if you do want to pop in and let us know like what you think about it, if you have any feedback, if you think about like why you might want to do it, we'd love to hear and discuss that with you. And by the way, I am looking over here for the chat, so I am listening. It is not. I'm not just looking over here browsing YouTube or something. But okay, so we've hit that. I wanted to go ahead and talk about. So we've discussed for common mistakes, just understanding like what using tap water that just really isn't suitable for your shrimp species. We've also talked about just understanding water parameters in general. And let's see. So before we'll go on to the next one. KJ Stevens did have one other question here. Any other chemical reactions happening that wouldn't be covered by a dechlorinator? All right, now, I mean, there might be some off-gassing. I don't know exactly what gases might be in the tap water. The only thing I can think of that would really change things is that tap water generally comes out highly oxygenated. And so if you let it sit, it's going to lose some of that oxygenation. But I'm not sure that's a good thing. I mean, if you have higher oxygenated water going into your tank, that's generally going to be a positive thing for your aquarium. So personally, I don't know about any chemical reactions that you really have to worry about. If you wanted to say add botanicals to to your water and then let that age and let the pH drop from there for like a Caridina tank, that might make a lot of sense. But if you're just talking about remineralized water or tap water, I don't see that much of a point here personally. Any other thoughts, Adam?
Yeah, I'm trying to get some validity to it.
I know I don't have that much data to actually back that up.
I wish I knew more. I should probably just stop talking because I probably don't know enough to speak to this level on it. Personally, to me, when I hear because I deal with like lots of people that are super, super into very specific things, right? Some different groups of killifish people have some, like you were talking about Caridina folk. Different circles find different things, and different things kind of spread. So I've heard a lot of the aging water conversation. To me, every time I hear it, it kind of sounds like letting, aging some grape juice in your fridge. Like, it doesn't turn it to wine. Like, you're missing some stuff there. Honestly, I would use the aging water as a better example of like, this is another just reason why I would say try RO. It's another variable you don't have to think about. Does aging water matter? Not if I use RO. Maybe it does for tap water. Maybe your water comes out with some weird thing you need to off gas that your municipality somehow has in the water. I'd be surprised if that was the case, to be honest. But I don't know enough chemically, so it could be possible. Let's move let's go back to non-chemistry question.
I know it is. There's a lot of information out there. I certainly don't know everything. Nobody does. So KJ Stephen does bring up heavy metals in particular, and I'm not sure how long it takes to actually bind those compounds. So I'd have to get back to you on that. I can definitely take a look. If you want to email me, I'd be happy to talk about that with you and try to find any research that I might be able to actually support one way or the other. So I'd love to chat about that more later.
Too. Yeah, I'll see if there's any validity to the heavy metal. So that's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. And then Electric Boogaloo is in chat. So hello. Thanks for joining us today. Baba Booey. Okay. So let's see here. We got a little sidetracked. Let's go ahead into another common shrimp keeping mistake. That's aside from like using inadequate tap water and not necessarily understanding the like water parameters and their importance in aquariums. So what would be another one for you?
I guess a problem that I see people run into with Neocaridina shrimp. Generally, Neocaridina shrimp are sort of the gateway drug of the shrimp world, just purely off of the quantity that already exists out there. And so
they're pretty addicting.
I tend to find. Are you okay if I draw this one into the industry a little bit?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
I think one of the issues that people wind up doing that I see a lot of, I feel like people treat all Neocaridina as kind of equal. Like they see the word cherry shrimp and they go, "Oh yeah, I know cherry shrimp. Oh yeah, cherry shrimp," and it's just not even close, right? And you see this in the guppy world too a lot. I don't know how many of these viewers deal with the fish side of the world, but in the guppy world, you have the old school live bear associations where it's all about the past, right? Look at all these cool strains of these gray fish that existed way back in the day. And then you have the opposite. You have the new school. How colorful can I get it? I want it to be purple with spots and freckles and yellow and like. All right,
that's pretty cool.
You get both sides of the spectrum, and I clearly bias towards the cool looking ones. But both sides of those people, like you aren't like one guppy is not the same as another guppy, right? And so to go to a fish store and be like, I'm buying a quantity one of unit skew this. That ain't the same as like somebody else who's breeding it down the street from you. And it's definitely not the same as buying it online from, an importer or like the source of where it came from and the lineage and how far away from a wild type is it? And is it currently being a worked on strain or is it just the color that matches? The genetic difference between all of those different things, you can have huge genetic variance and it can cause a lot of hardship. I think like new people tend to go to what is the cheapest, and the cheapest is the most produced, and frankly the most produced thing is kind of the weakest of kind of the group, right? And not
weakest in what way here are we talking about? It's like sensitivity, hardiness? Are we talking about genetics, like their coloration?
Not coloration. They're very pretty.
Okay.
Specifically hardiness, but that's kind of a vague cop-out answer. Specifically, I think I'd say that the imported shrimp tend to suffer from the extreme difference in parameters. I think that's one part of it. But besides the parameter thing, let's say you matched parameters perfectly or you were able to acclimate correctly. It's not necessarily the parameters that's all the problem. The genetic inbreeding that it takes to get some of these mass scale farms up and running, you kind of run into problems, right? It's very expensive for them to start brood stock at a farm. I know that. I'm setting up a room, right? So I'm getting ready to spend $4,000 and bring in thousands of shrimp, and so it's an expensive endeavor to buy your first round of livestock. And so if all I ever did was spend a one-time payment to get my original stock, and then if all I did was breed those and basically do no line breeding or nothing to ever increase my genetic diversity, and if over time if I'm culling out what I don't like and I'm sort of accidentally, I'd say, kind of colony line breeding my way down, it is kind of easy to run into some genetic issues. Like I have bought bags and bags of shrimp. I've matched parameters. I've done the acclimation correctly, and I'm talking like 3,000 cherry shrimp, right?
Sure.
And I will have, and they're marked, by the way. When you import shrimp, they tell you where they're coming from, what country. And so I'll have a cooler of, X many thousands of, red, blue, yellow, orange, all the different colors. And I'll go put all those in and they work like a charm. Everything's great. And then a different box that came from, one box came from Taiwan because it's very common. Most of my shrimp came from Taiwan, but maybe I got a box from Jakarta or, Indonesia or Thailand, like they, cycle out wherever they were cheap. I'd buy them from there and I'd get it from Transshipper and they'd show up, together, the two boxes. And the other box, I'd have incredibly high fail rate, like 80% within the first week. And I wouldn't even say
putting them in the same water, acclimating the same way.
Exactly.
And so just very different sensitivities and
completely
what they're used to, depending based on where these shrimp are coming from, right?
Yeah,
and that's not something that's really easy for a lot of hobbyists to find necessarily, which is a bit of a frustrating part. Was like when you're like people are importing from all different sources. Is this coming from Taiwan? Is this coming from Thailand? And you have to technically, like what you're saying is that you have to treat those shrimp differently, or they might respond better in different parameters, which can be a real problem in the hobby.
Sure, yeah, that's a better oversimplification. I got down the rabbit hole pretty quick in there, but yeah, I guess to summarize if we had to like put it, I get a 1-sentence little snippet to say what is the problem. I think the problem is that not all shrimp are equal, and that's a problem. Like, don't treat them all as equal. They're not. A red shrimp is not a red shrimp is not a red shrimp.
Yeah, I mean, I do get how that's frustrating as a hobbyist. Yeah, thinking about like, I was unsure if I wanted to go with like imported versus homebred shrimp when I initially got my first batch from Flip Aquatics, and I eventually just went with imported because I figured I was using remineralized RODI water. That'd be very controlled. They'd probably be prepared for that, and I wanted the like nicest color possible. Whereas the homebred were supposedly maybe not quite as nice of colors, but were much hardier and at least prepared for, more prepared for U.S. water. And they might be much better for tap water if you can get, say, a homebred shrimp. Of course, the more local you can get them, the more likely they are to be better. But it's always just difficult to know because there's so little information about where people actually get their different shrimp from, right?
Yep.
Was there anything else that I missed there? So we are trying to just summarize this, make sure that it's really useful for a beginner hobbyist to come in. So your main like tip would be to try to do a little bit more research on where these shrimp are coming from and understanding what tap water they might need, or how would you kind of summarize the tip overall?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I wish I had an answer key for you. And that's part of why I'm setting up all these tanks to start breeding and selling shrimp, right? Because I can't give you there's no cipher key, right? I can't be like, okay, buy these shrimp from this person, have this water parameter. I can't control that with what other people do, right? Because I'd love to say, dude, buy local, put my hair in a bun, and you're gonna love it, man. Go find your local club. Until the guy in your local club's actually importing, like we have here in Arizona. That's the biggest problem here in Phoenix, right? And so that part just blows my mind. I didn't know that, right? Like I was 18, still a kid, and buying, an adult, totally an adult now at 18, but I was, buying, groups of fish and shrimp off of, the different clubs local here. And I was like, oh yeah, these are all locally bred. Dude, none of them were locally bred. Not a single fish was bred in that country. Not a chance. No. And the reason I found out was because I was importing that around that time. I was at the airport and I saw the guy that I bought them from pick up coolers of shrimp, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that was classic.
Man,
so
that's frustrating.
And so there's a lot of that though in this hobby, right? Like that's, to me, that's just dishonesty, but there's a lot of people are honest, right? It's not all trying to hoodwink people, right? A lot of it's like, import is probably the cheapest way to get there, right? And that for the most part is true. And so it is just challenging. I guess my tip to the newer hobbyist, without some go-to source, if there is a person in the world that physically, that you shook their hand, that lives locally to you, and that they actually breed the animal, and you see babies in the tank, and you trust them, you've had a conversation, you've been to their house, you've seen them, right? Then you could trust them. Pretty much up until that, though, and that sounds very like, but I was blown away that I got hoodwinked by somebody that, local Facebook Marketplace group said they bred them, right? Okay. They've been on famous YouTuber podcasts talking about how they're a master shrimp breeder. And then magically there's no babies in any of the tanks. And magically, if you look at their stock list, it matches my import stock list from what I get from Taiwan exactly. Magical, right?
Convenient. Yeah.
You overnight started breeding 14 different types of plecos that match my entire inventory list. Interesting.
Yeah.
And so, to me, it is difficult. And just because you buy from a reputable importer to me, that doesn't help you, because I've been the reputable importer, and dude, it's a mess. Like, I would get.
You're saying you're not reputable?
No, I was the.
I'm a reputable importer.
I'm kind of putting the reputable.
I know.
I think the reputable importer title in and of itself is kind of bogus, right? Like, so you're the best at selling what you didn't make. Like, all right, yeah, okay, yeah, you and every other retailer. All right, sure. Nothing wrong with it, but like, if you want to, like, let's not. I'm not, throwing rocks in the glass house. Let's pick Flip Aquatics because he does it right. I like what Rob's doing. Like, I like what the idea that he's pushed to. But if you're selling imported shrimp, how are you putting parameters on your website? Like, that's cool. You have to, right? Somebody's going to ask, but you don't know. You have no idea. And like,
you don't think they can test the water in the bag and have a pretty good idea?
Absolutely,
it's just always wrong.
It's not always wrong. That's exactly the point, though. You're getting to it. It's like only a Sith deals in absolutes, right? Like, it's the problem with the whole import game is you have to say the word might and probably and skimp around 100% accurate every single time. Like, it might fall in that parameter, and they might have come from the same farm you bought from last time. And they might, like, how many mites in a row until you're like, dude, I got no clue. Like, I can't tell you with any level of certainty. And I've bought from all sorts of different sources. I bought from the same source for 6 years in a row. I had over the course of those 6 years, I probably spent $70,000 on just shrimp with that one source, and not the same parameters. The different parameters for different colors, different parameters from month to month, different parameters for the same color in the same shipment. How do you explain that? Like, all right, I guess they have different, and I know how you explain that. I've dug into it, and I understand like how it all works. So I get it, right? Like, all of the shrimp were bred somewhere. They're bred in large concrete troughs or big, breeding facilities, and they have the parameters that they have, and they use that because consistency is king in the shrimp breeding world, right? Sure. And so if you live in Taiwan and you have great rainfall, and maybe you don't live right on the coast, you're going to use rainwater, and that is what you use, right? And so they just do that, and they are breeding neos in very, very low TDS water. And so when I try to bring in shrimp from Taiwan specifically, and I'm using Taiwan. Taiwan's an entire country, right? So maybe your facility that you're buying from them in Taiwan is right next to the coast, and they actually do part saltwater, part freshwater from rain. And then everything I'm about to say goes out the window, and it's totally different. And that's that just one more variable, right? Like, we have 150 variable equation, and it's hard for people to figure it out. And so, like, the low TDS doesn't fare well when we try to use our normal, 150 to 350, TDS remineralized RO, common what you see on YouTube numbers.
Sure, absolutely. And
sorry, that was a huge rabbit hole. I love that. That was fun.
Definitely a bit of a rabbit hole there. So I wanted to summarize again. Buying shrimp is like getting drugs. You want to know that who you're buying from, so that you can make sure it's a good source, that they're breeding the shrimp properly, and that they're safe, they're happy, ideally, right?
Correct.
And when you're buying imported shrimp, they may be very healthy, or they may have like their own issues. And I've seen research papers that show that like 60+% of all imported shrimp have some sort of disease or epibiont like Scuturella japonica. And so you just never know what you're going to get anyway. If you want to, you can meet Bear Bottom Branton right behind the Dollar General dumpster in, it sounds like, the Phoenix area at 3 p.m. Okay? So
dude, that's right down
be ready.
We're going to be there.
Nice. I expect these shrimp to be in a brown paper bag and I want it. Yeah. Please wear your sketchiest clothes. I'll wear my sketchiest clothes. We can both have masks on. We'll go from there. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so there's your tip. Let's go into a couple more here. We're going to be trying to keep this under an hour here. The other, one of the next biggest issues that I would say that a lot of new shrimp keepers have is overfeeding. It's just so easy. I mean, you see so many videos talking about the different types of food to feed your shrimp, and they all have a huge variety. Oh, you got to feed them a little bit every day. You got to feed them. You only need to feed them once a week, once a month. It just depends so much on what your tank is like, the tank conditions exactly. And so often people start trying to feed all these different foods they got. Maybe it's just that they're excited about it and they want to see if their shrimp are going to like them. But when you first get your 10 shrimp that you're putting into a tank, man, they do not need very much food. There should be hopefully a ton of food in that ecosystem already if you've properly matured the tank. And so having just adding a bunch of food is completely unnecessary. For me, I don't know what you would necessarily go for if you've got 3 or 4 fish, but I would want to put in, if I was using this tetracolor granules, I'd want 3 to 4 granules in there if I had 10 shrimp. Maybe throw that in 1 to 2 times a week, plus the all the rest of the food that's produced naturally in the ecosystem, and you're good. You don't need to be throwing in a bunch of food to change the water parameters, to produce a bunch of waste that is just going to potentially harm your shrimp, change water parameters. Anything to add there?
We can keep that one pretty quick. I'm in full agreement. Most people are overfeeding them. I think the only thing I'd add on the overfeeding part of the conversation is I feel like people tend to overfeed, especially with pellets and I remember helping out a friend and they used flake food for shrimp, and I was like, that's crazy. That's not that you can't, but in 15 seconds, half the minerals that they sprayed onto that flake are already in their water column. How many minerals are left by the time it gets down to the shrimp? They can kind of go up there to get it, and we watched for a solid 5 minutes as none of them proceeded to do that. I feel to me, I would tell people probably put the food away for the first month of keeping them. I wouldn't.
They shouldn't eat it.
I wouldn't. Yeah. There's no.
I know. It becomes a problem. I mean, so here's some shrimp envy stuff. I think that overall, nutritionally, probably great for shrimp. But when they come in these huge pellets, that's what I worry about a little bit. So I've talked to him a little bit about this. And he's like, oh yeah, you just got to just crush it up and feed as you want. And I think that's perfectly good advice, but it's so easy as a new shrimp keeper to get these pellets and be like, oh, this is the amount maybe I'm supposed to add here. It's just something that we need, that I hope people are more aware of just feed minimally. You want to get them breeding and start getting more and more shrimp in the tank, then you can really add it. You can get those feeding frenzies. But before then, work up to it. Let your system acclimate to the amount of food and start off very, very small at first. Right?
Yeah, for sure. Just one thing to keep in mind as an engineer, the way I look at it is energy in and energy out of any system, right?
Absolutely.
When you're looking at the energy in, your light should account for most of what will eventually be the nutrition for your shrimp. So if you are trying to look at the amount of energy you're putting into a tank for 10 shrimp in a 10-gallon or 20-gallon, that light can provide enough energy for way more shrimp than that. And probably way more than anybody wants to actually find out. You can probably keep a lot of very healthy shrimp with just a light that's on for, an extended period of time. Of course, I feed shrimp all the time. I love feeding them. It's cool to see the frenzy. I love feeding them, blanched vegetables and other cool, homemade, sinking, frozen meat foods, right? But, I really try, I feed my fish, and then the shrimp kind of hang out. If you're feeding your shrimp on purpose, you're probably going to overdo it. They don't eat as much as you think they do.
In a fish tank, certainly. Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely. And K-Dude Steven just added, like, if they're not thrilled when you put food in there, you need to wait longer to feed them. And I think there's very much some truth to that. It depends on what the purpose of the food is. Because I've been seeing some discussion about, like, oh, you want to, if the shrimp are attacking the food, then that means they really like it. And so that could mean that they're hungry, or it could mean that it tastes really good. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy. Like, I was seeing something about sugary biofilm. There's a little bit of controversy between Mark's Shrimp Tank and Shrimp Sanctuary on this. And one of the tests that Shrimp Sanctuary was pulling out was saying that, oh, the shrimp like this nettle leaf more than the nettle leaf that was in the sugary biofilm. And it's like, and so therefore this biofilm must be better. And I don't know, I'm not sure that that shrimp going more for one particular kind of food is actually indicative of that food being better for them or in any way healthier. So I think that's just an interesting aside here that we don't have to get into too much. But do you have any quick thought on that?
No, it's interesting. I got to test it out. Yeah, we can jump.
Yeah, I'll show you some of the videos.
I'd love to play with it. I'm interested.
Yeah, no, it seems like the sugary method seems like a really interesting way of bringing in a lot more biofilm into a Caridina tank, because biofilm, from what I can understand about the research, it just doesn't grow as fast in the acidic conditions. And so having some biofilm that's grown out of the tank, bringing it in, could be really useful.
Sure.
Anyway.
I got a note on breeding to add, kind of aside, and we'll be quick on this one.
Okay. Fast as you can.
Yeah. When you're breeding, surplus is helpful. So if your goal is to breed,
you mean surplus food, right?
Surplus energy, yeah.
Energy. Okay, sure.
Because they need that. They need the extra energy. And so my tip to all of you is, if you start with cherry shrimp, day one, your goal is not to breed. My day one goal is, I want to see these shrimp live and thrive, and I want to see them still in this tank, happy as a lark in 3 months. And then you can turn on breeding, right? And you can start feeding heavier. You can feed different things. You can adjust your, lipids, and you can start dialing it in then. But day one, like, I want them to not die on the first molt cycle. So let's not overdo it, right? Yeah. All right.
You don't need a bunch. You don't need a huge variety of food to do that. You let the ecosystem handle it for the most part. That's the goal, especially so for Caridina tanks that are more like sensitive and like can't process waste as well. Okay, so let's see. How about we each maybe do one more tip, like for common shrimp keeping mistakes, and then if you want to dive in a little bit more into talking about the industry here, we've got. So you're trying to keep the stream under an hour, so we've got about 13 more minutes. Cool. We can use the time as we want to. Okay. What's your next tip? First? Nope. Oh, I just went. So take it away.
Okay. My next tip and this one, if you're listening out there and you have a whole bunch of fish tanks, this is one that you should totally listen to. This one's to like me in the future and in the past, and all y'all. So I think we do in this hobby, we do a good job of like trying to learn water chemistry. We do a good job of trying our best, with the time that we have, to learn the different tests that matter and how to do them and how to perform different water tests and which ones to buy, which ones matter. Something that I think we've gotten away from a little bit is understand that everything in your fish tank or shrimp tank, every single thing in there is its own test. It's all test equipment, right? It might be a cherry shrimp test equipment. It might be a little nerite snail test equipment. It might be a little plant test equipment, whatever it is. But especially those of you that are more experienced, honestly, the testing your water stuff, we get overblown on this a lot. If you have a lot of fish tanks and you've been doing this for years and years, like, you should be able to look in your tanks and tell me what those parameters are. Just look at a snail shell and tell me, is that ramshorn snail shell looking healthy? Cool. My ratios are good and I have enough minerals. I'm sitting happy. Look at your valve scenario. Is it looking correct, or are the edges getting frayed? Like, you should know different plant problems and see, from a tank across the room. If I look at my guppy grass, and I really don't do many plants anymore, I've done over 150 different species probably of cultivating different aquarium plants, and that was a big thing back when I was in high school and had more time. But since then, I've just gotten big on what works and everything, and to me, that's guppy grass for my purposes. And so I can look at guppy grass and I can tell you what's going on with that tank between the shrimp, the fish, the plants, the snails especially. Snails are a dead giveaway. That's the easiest one. If you're just getting into it, your snail will tell you what's going on. Like, watch them, right?
And specifically, you're thinking about on a like pH, GH, KH level, they can give you a great indicator of those parameters of whether they're in range for harder water species like Neocarotina, right?
Additionally, to build off that, the plants, when you get a little bit better at it, you can start getting down to water level deficiencies, right? You can judge your nitrate levels based off of plant growth. You can judge, obviously it's a cycle tank. You won't see the other things, but I can see when I have tanks getting ready to crash. So when I start seeing, I think there's nitrite in that tank, I think something's wrong. Like, there's ways to just visually, you'll start catching those things. And all this tip is just a reminder, like, the best piece of test equipment that you own is spending 10 more minutes and just enjoying the tank and looking at it and noticing things, right? Oh, I never noticed, XYZ. Just, this is a note to me, right? When I watch this in 5 years with my friend looking at how cringy I was back then, go look in your tanks and see, is everything looking all right? Is everything good? And if it is, dude, you're doing awesome. You're keeping fish and shrimp alive in a glass box in your house and you're enjoying it. That's a win. Like, you did the thing.
For sure. You don't need to constantly be testing. And like, it's kind of funny that I spend so much time talking about water parameters, but I very rarely test my tanks. I only test them if I'm seeing something that's visibly wrong, if I'm starting to see either molting issues, or I'm finding
clip that.
Yeah. If I'm finding that's like some of the plants don't seem to be growing well, or if my microorganism populations have declined, then I'm like, what's going on here? Is this something that is going to be affecting my shrimp in the future or affecting them now? Like, it's amazing how much our tanks really can tell us about water parameters without having to measure anything. It's just really useful. It's really useful to understand what the parameters are and what they do 100%. And what's healthy, but then you don't need to be measuring constantly, right? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Great tip. I love it. That's exactly what we need to hear. Yeah, let's see. Let me check if there's anything. Bare Bottom Brandon agrees 100%. I believe with what your point you're saying. Look at your tank, see what's going on, and try to understand what it's communicating, what it's trying to say to you is the best thing we can do. So for me, I'm going to say one last tip would be to one problem that a lot of new shrimp keepers have, I think, is just disturbing the substrate and the tank as a whole. Once the tank is established, once you've got your substrate that's been sitting there and hopefully maturing over time, it's developing the different bacterial colonies and like fungi in it that it needs to be able to digest waste and create and cycle nutrients. Those organisms are meant to stay there. And so if we disturb the substrate by either, say, pouring in water too quickly with a water change or rescaping, I think that we're opening up our shrimp to potential issues because they're right down at the bottom right next to the substrate. So they're going to be just in the debris that you've kicked up, and that opens up and so that may end up traveling into their gills and like exposing them to a bacterial infection, like something from the genus Vibrio. I've seen a couple studies about Vibrio species and how they impact like farm shrimp. And so those are just often like bacteria that are commonly living in our aquarium and in our substrate, but they're not going to be exposed to our shrimp unless we are disturbing that substrate. One of the reasons I bring this up is because it was a key point hammered home by a breeder I was talking to, Carrick Payton. He breeds these beautiful award-winning boa carotina, and he's noticed that every time he disturbs a substrate, he starts to see deaths. And so if you can avoid, he now just tries to not touch it, even if there might be a little bit of debris building up. Just try to, you can either try to really lightly vacuum the top, or get something like a burrowing snail, like a rabbit snail, to actually get that debris into the substrate in a controlled way. But you don't want to be necessarily kicking it up, as I think that can cause more disease in the system, just random deaths that you might otherwise be able to avoid because of the bacteria, and also partly because of the hydrogen sulfide that's brought up. But I don't know how much one or the other might be playing a role, if one plays more of a role than the other really in it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it definitely depends on, the system you're looking at. I think it varies a little bit. For Caridina, I can't speak to it, right? Like, we talked a little bit about some of the intricacies when it gets to maybe some of the more sensitive species of shrimp. I mean, probably not a YouTube-friendly hot take, but I breed a lot of shrimp without any substrate, right? So I don't, on all those tanks, I never run into a problem. Like, there's nothing for me to kick up accidentally. And I've also bred shrimp in tanks with 6 to 8 inches of substrate, right? I have noticed on deep substrate beds, I have noticed more problems. So if you have, a 1/4 inch of sand on the bottom because you wanted your blue dreams to pop against some white sand, honestly, a 1/4 inch, you're probably not trapping enough gas under there to make that much of a difference. Maybe you have bacterial issues, and I'd love to see more studies on that. But for me, I wouldn't see any problem. Especially sand seems to get more gunky because it doesn't make its way deeper into the substrate. I find myself kind of skimming sand with my python in my dad's house all the time. So I've never really, and I have shrimp in all those tanks, and they look great, and they're doing great. They're breeding fine.
You mentioned skimming, and so is it that you don't end up disturbing it? I can definitely see an argument for sand just being more compact and not enabling some of those like more either anaerobic or detrimental bacterial colonies that could otherwise be an issue. Whereas, maybe it is more of a problem for substrates that can collect debris, and they do cycle it. They do break it down and release those nutrients for plants, but disturbing them can lead to issues. So I see there's a lot of there are a lot of variables here that make that advice like a lot of conditions that we need to discuss really to have it.
But that's well put.
Rule of thumb.
Okay. And additionally, I think the people that it would most affect already kind of know it. Like if you're doing really deep bed substrate, you didn't accidentally probably do that unless you just bought too big of a bag day one. Like, you kind of have to be trying to have 4 to 8 inches of substrate in a tank. It doesn't come naturally to beginners. Or if you're using a more advanced substrate, like somebody told you to use a clay type substrate for whatever you're doing, and so like I have a higher expectation that those people can find their way on this one, and so they're probably not getting in there as much. If you have a clay type substrate and you're getting in there weekly and just gravel back in the whole thing and turn it all over, I'd be like, you're just gonna turn that to mud to me. At least the stuff I played with.
So I will say that I started out with a 2 to 3 inch just fluval stratum substrate, and that's one of the tanks where I would occasionally notice issues. Like if I tried to rescape, if I did try to gravel back a little bit deeper, I would notice a few deaths like over the next week or so after that. With the Caridina tank where I disturbed the substrate as I was moving them, that colony did not do very well. I only had a few survivors, and they're currently recovering. I think it definitely depends, but I do think it's a little bit more of an issue for just substrates that can collect debris, maybe regardless of depth, or within, if it's like an inch or deeper, you might be more likely to have that issue, just as like a general rule of thumb.
Yeah.
So sounds good. So we've gone over a number of like different tips and mistakes here. So let's go ahead now and talk about a little bit more about your experience in the industry. I know we've talked about that in terms of imported shrimp and how they can really vary in what parameters they want, especially Neocaridina that you're mostly specializing in. So what would be some other takeaways based on your experience as an importer?
That's a good question. Well, for one, I think people don't realize how high die-off in shrimp actually is in the industry. I think we have a lot of people that kind of underreport numbers for self-serving purposes. I've been guilty of that before. I've sold tons of shrimp, and I was like, oh yeah, I've got it dialed in, dude. I just killed a whole cooler a week ago. You know what I mean? Like, that's not good for business. It's not sad. Good. Like, yeah, and you get incentivized, right? Like, you've now, like, once you turn your business model into that, you can't go from importing to breeding in those same tanks. So once you've made that switch, if you ever need to walk that back, you have probably a 4 to 8 month window where you cannot reliably produce revenue out of those tanks. And so when you see people that have large, import racks, like, they're locked in. Like, that's what they're doing now. They're importers. They have to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. But the incentive structure on that just leans in kind of a negative way to all the consumers, right? And so that part's frustrating. That's part of why I've gotten out of it. I've just had some time to reflect on that, and it's not great. But I guess what I want to get back to is I'm kind of saying that there's high die-off rates, across the board. And there might be some importers in there saying, no, there's not. I'm the exception to the rule. And if that was real, and let's pretend they're right, and I'm the one that I had no idea what I was doing. This kid just screwed it all up. To you, that's an importer that has really high success rate, right? I would say, show me where your Lamborghini's parked. Like, I want to see it. I want to ride. Because I can buy a Neocaridina shrimp from, 4,000 miles away, and it can land, 30 miles away. I can go pick it up, and it's not on my door, but I can get it landed at Sky Harbor International Airport. And my out-the-door price, are you cool if I say the actual price of a cherry shrimp for an importer?
Yeah, you're welcome to talk about it.
Yeah, shrimp are 18 cents a piece. So your Neocaridina that you're buying for between $3 to, I saw them at a pet store for $12 the other day, but for effectively $3 to $5, that's a, sub 20 cent animal that they bought in the mail. And so if you have these large scale production facilities where you're able, in effectively 40 fish tanks in my bedroom as a high school student, I could flip, 4 coolers a month reliably while still doing school full time.
How many shrimp can you fit in a cooler? I'm not very familiar with that measurement.
Coolers are generally fairly the similar size. I usually get the coolers that I would get from, and different countries have different size, and it's kind of a mess. But generally speaking, a cooler can hold somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,000 to 10,000 shrimp, depending on the cooler, the country, all that, yada yada. Right? If you're buying it from somewhere like Israel or the Czech Republic or somewhere in Europe, to me, it's going to take longer to get them. So I ask them to, ship them 20% light. And so I don't get as many total quantity out the door as I might get from somewhere getting them from Taiwan. So that's just, it's all about the price per unit, right? But the reason you're selling them for $5 isn't because I'm a Bitcoin trillionaire, right? I'm selling them for $5 because although I bought them for 18 cents a piece, I had to kill, a handful for every one I get to you. And you might say, oh, that's not true, right? Well, did your customer see that level of success? How many DOA? What's your DOA percent, right? Like, even if you have a 95% alive arrival, which, by the way, I've lost entire coolers because it got too hot outside, right? Like, your long-term average of, arrived alive in the bag to you as an importer, they're shipping from really far away. It's overnighted and it's fast shipping. But it's not 100%. You will lose bags of stuff. It's just how the industry works, and they're always yellows for some reason. But
interesting.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of a joke.
Take me through when you do get a shipment. Is it more that there are a few dead shrimp in every bag, or is it more that many of the bags do survive, but occasionally you'll have one shipment where just none of them survive, or a few bags that are just dead. How does it's all sorts basically.
I've had every one of those. What's more common is within any given shipment, if like I kind of classify them as like a good shipment or a bad shipment. A bad shipment means something was wrong with the whole order. Like maybe it got held up in customs in California and it missed its flight, and then it would have arrived at midnight, and so Southwest Cargo doesn't open, and I can't pick it up for another 12 hours. Like, oh man, like that's a bad shipment. Like I'm going to see deaths everywhere, and that's going to be like half of the bags might have 100% fatality. Like you might have just red water by the time you get to them.
Okay. Yeah. And it's not like the importers have a DOA policy that you can return, like get replacements on. You can?
You can work it out with your vendors and suppliers. Like, it depends on the relationship. They're pretty good about that. It depends. I've eaten some myself. I took some on the nose. And that sucks. But sometimes
not literally eaten. Yeah.
No, most of the time they're pretty good about it because they want you to keep buying from them. So especially if it was their fault somehow. I had one where they forgot to use pure oxygen. I don't even know how that's possible. It shouldn't be legal. Every single bag was completely dead, and it wasn't. I was like, wow. And I wasn't the only customer. Like every shipment they did that day, they refunded everybody. That's horrible. But it's rough.
It's just kind of a reality, though, of importing live animals that you have, unfortunately, a relatively high failure rate, it sounds like, or like, I don't know exactly what the death rate might be. Whether there are probably some importers that are better than others.
Sure.
Depending on
and
it. But
I may have been below average, right? Like you're in Phoenix, it's hotter there. Like maybe if you lived in a cooler state and your box didn't get to the same, like you didn't have the same challenges, like, all right, like maybe that's reasonable, right? Like the concrete on the ground at my airport when the box is sitting on the ground, that concrete's 130 degrees in the summer, right? Like, ooh, how long does it have to sit to be a problem? And the answer is not long. But generally, and I don't have actual data. I'm just generally thinking of what it was. Across all those years, I probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of about 95% live arrival in the bag. So pretty good from the supplier, generally.
Yeah,
that's including entire coolers that went down, right? So that's generally like when you don't lose the whole cooler, you might lose a bag. But if you have a good bag, like if they're all alive, like most of them are alive, you're not going to see a bag where it's like, oh yeah, there's, half dead. That's kind of rare because that curve happens so fast, right?
Sure.
You lose one, the next one's dead in probably 20 minutes. The next one's dead 10 minutes later. The next one's dead in a minute. The next one's dead half a second, and then you lose
more and more ammonia stacking up. Yeah.
And so that's just what I've noticed. I've never, I wouldn't say never. I very infrequently would run into like a bag where they're in the process of crashing. You either kind of catch it where there's only one dead or two dead, or you lost kind of the whole bag. Shrimp, by the way, shrimp in the bag tend not to eat their own dead, so you will get bodies in the bag. But yeah, so I got 95% success rate on the bag, but I know for a fact my out the door number. So like if I bought 100 shrimp, I would get 95 would get into my tanks alive.
Okay.
For a fact, my average was probably of the 95 that were in my tanks, probably 50-ish would leave. And what happened to the other 45? Oh, they're gone. Like, you're not going to, I didn't pull a single body. And this was happening at a scale of tens of thousands of shrimp. And I didn't pull bodies. Like,
well, I'm sure you tried different acclimation methods.
Oh, yeah.
Different parameters.
Yep.
And it's just that it seemed like no matter different sources for the shrimp. And it was just very high variability in terms of how many might survive regardless of what you did. And so it sounds like it just always ended up being like 50% or less survival in the end that acclimated.
I'm using real round numbers, right? Like hopefully there's businesses around right now that are doing importing that could come in and correct me. And they're like, no. We can statistically show you our import numbers, and I can show you, my profit and loss. And I could show you where I imported 4,000 units Of that, I had 3,825 alive, and I have 3,700 shipped to customer. I'd love, like, that'd be cool. That's just not really possible in the livestock industry, right? We're kind of using the same tanks, revolving them in and out. Like, my inventory is 0, but did I actually empty out all the water in the tank? No, there's probably 10 of them sitting somewhere. Like,
it's difficult to keep track of.
It is hard to inventory manage.
But so you're saying that, I mean, yeah, it's seems like a relatively high death toll, even when you are a caring, like, person.
Yeah.
That you're trying to take great care of these shrimp and do what's best for them. And it just, between the stress of shipping and just different parameters, is just very difficult to keep them to get at like a high enough survival rate that's like feels ethical in the industry. So that's what's kind of moved you out of it. Is that right?
That's a good point. Yeah, it's partly the ethical part. I remember I was on the phone with a friend of mine that worked for a fish store. I'm not going to name it because actually the fish store is not bad. I don't hate the fish store down the street, but it is a local store to me. And he was an employee there, and we were friends because we went to the same fish club. And I was asking him, like, this is after kind of like my first big failure. Like, I'd imported probably six coolers at that point, 3 different shipments in a row where I kicked butt. Like, I had almost 100% success rate in the bag, and then I shipped out probably 80% of what I bought over those 3 months, and I had probably sub 5% DOA to my customer. And so it was really profitable for the first 3 shipments. And then my next one that came in, I literally changed absolutely nothing. Like, it wasn't that I changed any way that I did it. And just flat on my face. Like, it was like everything. Like, I had 2 coolers, one of them, like, just hot. Like, I got them and the bags were hot. They weren't all dead in the bag, but it was definitely like a higher casualty toll. I probably only had 80% success rate in that cooler. That was the one that was sitting there stacked too high in the airport. So that was the bottom one that was on the concrete.
Okay.
And the top one did better. More insulation, I guess. But I saw all sorts of issues, right? And it's like, oh, well, maybe they just all got way overheated and, that's just a one-off. And it's like, okay, well, it's not that hot in the winter. And I randomly have failures in the winter too. And the failures don't come as like they're all dead in the bag when I get them. The failure comes as I'm shipping them out and I run out of inventory. Like, I bought 10,000 reds and I have only shipped 4,000 and I'm out. What? Like, where did they go? And they're not in the tanks. And that's the symptom. That's the symptomatic feeling. And so I called my buddy that was at the store when the first time I really had this happen, when I was looking at my inventory numbers, because I oversold. So I was selling on Amazon and I oversold. In one day, I oversold 50 orders of reds. And I was like, dude, I tracked my inventory. Like, I know how many I bought. I counted them when I put them in the tank. I've been completely accurate pulling them out. I actually have margin built into it. I say I shipped 10, but I actually shipped 12, and I'm calculating of shipping 14. And I'm straight up, there's not a red shrimp I own. Like, what happened? And he literally told me, he's like, yeah, the fish store I work for, he's like, yeah, dude, every morning we pull out like, half a catch can of deads. And he's like, dude, the shrimp, we pretty much just don't keep track of. Like, we buy them on every single, like, we just buy the same, 100 of each color, and we don't track inventory. And he's like, we do not sell anywhere near what we bring in. And it's like the mystery of the lost shrimp. And so the reason I'm telling you all that isn't to like complain about being an importer, because I really don't think I'm unique in that. I think honestly, profit margin wise, you can suffer an 80% loss and be profitable. So when you see a lot of these people around that are profitable, it doesn't mean they're having great success. They probably are having a lot of loss.
Yeah,
but
it's all built in.
A lot of margin. Yeah. And so I asked him, and I felt really bad after it. And I was really thinking about getting out of it. And looking back, I probably should have. Like, I was better at breeding. But you get into that mentality of like, well, I have, now that I've converted them all to, I got rid of all my substrate, I got rid of all my plants, I got rid of all, I converted them to flipping tanks, and now I have 2 friends that are employees that I'm paying, and it turns into a business that it's hard to go back real quick. But
for sure. So all of this is at least like, the ethics, the just like the difficulty of handling the deaths and having them all shipped in, and taking care of each shipment, and all the variability of that. All of those reasons are kind of what has pushed you into starting to like really do a serious home breeding setup, trying to create.
Can I add one thing to that? I know we're out of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say it's ethical on the side of the importer, because at some point, like, what's that quote from Stalin? Like, one death's a tragedy, but a million's a statistic. Like, at some point, you just, if working in the industry of around fish or any livestock, you just kind of get numb to it. Like,
yeah, I totally understand.
It's a spreadsheet. Like, I don't, and I'm not pulling out bodies, so there's no mental correlation. It's just, I bought 10,000, I sold 4,000, and my new number is 0. Okay, next month I must order 12,000, right? Like, so it's not the ethical part of that conversation. To me, and it actually kind of like gets me in my head a little bit, like, I'm not choked up, but like it bugs me. Like, I feel it right now. It's like, I feel weird right now. My problem with it ethically is to the consumer, because that was me, dude. Like, I remember being like 12 years old, watching like old school videos, and like, this is like early YouTube, and like going to those like AAPE meetings, and like I remember buying, like, saving up birthday money for my first batch of like 10 shrimp. And this is absolutely not just dogging on it, but it was like, I think the first shrimp I bought were probably from Flip Aquatics, and I was not 12. This took 4 years of me getting into the hobby of watching and looking at shrimp before I ever bought any. And like, I absolutely failed. And yeah, I was probably, because I was just a dumb 16-year-old kid and didn't know what I was doing. But then I failed again, like another time. And then I went to the local guy who was telling me all this stuff that he was doing, and and then I tried again and failed again. And so I guess my point to all of you out there is, like, the industry is kind of setting you up to fail, and that it's not always your fault. Like, that's the hard part, right? Did the 10 shrimp you got, are those just the 10 ones that haven't died yet? Like, a lot of this importing model is sell them so fast that they just don't die on your hands, right? Because if I bought 10,000, I sold 4,000, right? Literally, as a business owner, you look at that and go, what can I do to market them to sell them within 1 week so that I can sell 8,000? Because that's much higher margin. And so that's what people get really good at doing. And so when you see these really famous importers, I'm not going to name them, but you know who they are, and they know who they are when they're watching. When they do pre-order sales, when they do things like, we'll quarantine them for 2 weeks and then give them to you type things, their pre-orders are on purpose. And it's not because they have a cash flow issue. They're good businessmen. The reason they do that has one purpose, and it's because they know they're going to die on their hands. So let's not do that. And so when they wind up dying on your hands, they can sell you a new remineralizer, a new shrimp food, a new this, a new that, and you get to watch their content more. And then you're gonna buy the next ones from them because you already watched all this content from them. And that, to me, is dirty. Like, I feel like gross, and like, and it's just not right, right? Like, it's just, like, it's stuff like that to me. Like, we don't need to get into the ethical conversation of the importing side. I don't think you're ethically doing the wrong thing being the importer. The consumer is buying it, like, and that's totally pointing the finger. The problem with the importer is that you're now screwing over your consumer by necessity, because you don't know what parameters those shrimp were bred in. You're lying on any way that you tell your customer, and you're probably going to blame them, or they're going to blame themselves when they fail. And I mean, they're 80% fail end of life anyways. Like, if you just buy them and if you just try to keep them, about 80% of them won't live. So if you're pre-selling them really quick to get them out of your tanks, I wouldn't say that, like, oh, this lady bought them on Facebook Marketplace, or they bought them on eBay, or they bought them on Amazon, or off this website, and like, oh, I killed my first batch of shrimp. Like, I don't know if I agree with that sentence. I don't think you killed your first batch of shrimp. It's super possible that your first batch of shrimp were dead before you even ordered them. Like, you just happened to be the one that got those 10. And like, and that's sad. Like, that does not make me feel great at the end of the day. And that's a pretty morbid way to look at it. And I'm not trying to oversimplify it. And like, we have a limited amount of time, so I am. there's lots of benefits and lots of merits, and having the structure of distribution in the aquarium hobby the way it is today didn't fall out of thin air. It is a profitable way to organize the structure of the logistics for breeding live animals. And to that point, they have made it profitable for many, many middlemen. But like as a consumer,
yeah, it is just unfortunate to think of how many people are going to be dealing with those deaths that are not their fault really at all. And but obviously is beneficial to the model for people to, it's the most profitable situation to if the shrimp do die, because especially if people do care and then want to try better. And there's something to be said for like a mix of sometimes it is the hobbyist responsibility of doing a little bit more research, and like Shrimply Explained is always trying to make sure that information is widely available as possible. But yeah, I absolutely get the frustration there of having shrimp that you just don't, why are these dying? Everything is perfect, and it's because they're not prepared for it. So I did want to dig in real quick into one thing that you said, which was about the importers keeping the shrimp. Like, I know that Flip Aquatics does talk about or maybe I shouldn't be saying names, but their 1 month quarantine policy. And so that was what always attracted me to them. And I mean, I would think that policy would do something to really help hobbyists and reduce that amount of the amount of deaths just caused by importing. I mean, do you agree?
No.
Why not? How wouldn't that help? I'm a little confused, but so why wouldn't having, so you're just talking about them wanting to get pre-orders and get them out the door as soon as possible. It seems like Flip Aquatics is trying to hold them for a while, at least, to make sure that they do survive, and then give those survivors that hopefully are a little bit more prepared for your water parameters time. I mean, you don't think that would give a better success rate to hobbyists? I'm not saying compared to homebred or like shrimp, but out of the imported options.
No, and I think we could do a whole hour segment as to why. I have lots of reasons why. To me, I like to clarify it beyond compare. If I was selling you a car and I offer you a 1 month guarantee on the engine, is that a lot of warm and fuzzies? I'm an engineer. I could do the math. I could tell you how, you want to see the engine? I'll tell you wear cycles, and I can meter when I think it's right. And it's not a how long is it conversation, right? If they were going under the presupposition that he could keep them forever, right? If that's the train of logic, right? If the idea is, well, Flip Aquatics can keep them around for a month, therefore he must not be seeing any fail rate over time, and so he could keep them for forever. I'd tell you that's great. Why doesn't he only do breeding anymore? Oh, because you can't. It doesn't work that way.
I mean, I get that. I think there's a lot going in there in terms of profitability.
Sure.
For sure. So we need to talk
example,
about that. And I'd love to talk about that. Yeah. Sure. Last couple things before we end stream. Say hello.
On a curve, if you import 200 shrimp and put them in a 10-gallon tank, and it takes 3 months to see complete die-off, and you don't suffer a crash, right? Because he has a good water system in that building. So you're not going to crash and kill the whole tank. It's an overtime issue of molting and seeing other problems. If there's a curve like that, and on a lot of imported shrimp there are, right? I've seen that over a long period of time. A month doesn't give me warm and fuzzies. To me, my number where I really started seeing issues was about 2.5 months. I could not keep around the number that I started with for that long. So although I brought in new shrimp every 2 weeks, I wasn't doing 100% inventory every 2 weeks. My inventory turn time was probably over 2 months. And what I noticed is the inventory that sat on hand longer than 2 months, that was problematic. In my first month, did I lose 80 for 50%? No. Did I lose some percent? Sure. And is that totally eatable? Yes. Right. The business model of importing works totally if you can get them all out within a month. But if he had to sit on those shrimp for 4 months, Is it profitable? And the answer is probably not. At least not to the same margin.
You just don't think they are set up to like acclimate well to the new conditions that they're going to be in regardless, essentially?
No, I've just seen I've seen too many times that it didn't work. And it's not just one bad supplier. These are a handful of suppliers. It's not just Southeast Asian suppliers. I've supplied them out of Israel, Czechoslovakia, Germany, Norway. There was a breeder I worked with. And some of these were like, smaller time farming. Like in Czechoslovakia, they don't even have big farms. Like these are like people kind of like me that are just breeding them in, hundreds and hundreds of fish tanks in their basement type people. Not designated farms, and therefore the price per unit was a lot higher. But it's a problem when you can't tell me what your parameters are, so that I can't succeed. Like I don't. That's not This isn't a friendly relationship anymore. This is a very business oriented industry secret. Like, dude, it's a live animal. Like, there's not a reason you shouldn't be able to tell me every parameter I want to know about where it came from and be happy to do so. And I will tell you straight off the bat, every farm I've ever worked with has told me no. A couple have told me some things I wanted to know, and that was really cool. I got on FaceTime with a dude in Taiwan that I ordered all those 70,000 shrimp from over the years. And I bought enough that I was a big enough customer, which I was tiny, by the way, compared to some of these places. But I bought enough that he cared about me enough to hop on a call. And he did tell me like his TDS, and he showed me, and I asked him because I want to see you hold the TDS meter in the water that they're breeding in. I want to see it because I can't. Because I'm like, dude, it's it cannot be. And he showed me, and he had not told me up until then. He was just like, no, they're normal neocaridina. Watch a YouTube video, you're gonna love it. His TDS was like 15. I was like, okay, so
what?
Yeah, not what I thought they were. Yeah.
Huh. Okay.
And he goes, yeah, they're it's rain, it's water from the sky, it's rain water.
That's hard to believe. Like, jeez,
dude, ridiculous. Yeah. So, that's what has inspired me to do my own thing, where I'm going to standardize my water parameters. Right. I'm just going to say, this is exactly what they are. I'll test them live as often as people want me to. I'm going to keep them consistent using computers to continue just measuring and just keep whatever I want them to be. I'll dial them in. I already know what numbers I want for the system here. It's the other room that is going to have some variableness to it. But on the main system, it's one big system. So it's the same. It will all be bred by me. And so my disease, I can still turn off rows if I want to quarantine different rows and such. But like I can dial in, like my shrimp are bred at these parameters. Here's what they are. Here's exactly how you hit them. Anybody in the world, if you do X, Y, and Z, you get shrimp that live. And it's shocking to me that nobody else has that. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some home breeders, but I think you're going for an even larger scale here. So I'm excited to hear how that goes. I do want to say thank you so much for being here, Adam. We've managed to successfully go in 30 minutes over our expected time.
Yeah.
So perfect. Hopefully delivered some useful information to you all who are watching at home. Dexter, unfortunately, so I don't know if you've been looking at the chat, Adam. He's talking about DIY remineralizers, gypsum salt and Epsom salt. I think that is there a place more about that? Is there like some place you'd be okay with him contacting you about to maybe talk about it? Because I don't think we can get in that right now.
Yeah.
So real quick, where would you go?
Maybe we do another live stream in the future going through some remineralizer stuff, and I can share my recipe and my thoughts on some other recipes. But if you want, you can shoot him my email. I probably don't want to say it on this because it's forever. But if you have some way to contact him on his channel somehow, maybe you can shoot him over my email. You already have it.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Feel free, Dexter. So if you want to go email contact at shrimplyexplained.com. And I can go ahead and send you over Adam's email, and he can tell you a lot more about remineralizers here. So for everybody who's watching, thank you so much for your time for this kind of test live stream. Hopefully it was interesting. If you do have any feedback here, we're hoping to continually improve this stream. I want to have Adam on and hopefully a few other guests as well here. So please, I would love to have feedback, whatever you thoughts, how we can improve the stream, what you thought of it overall. But thank you so much for spending some of your evening with us, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Happy shrimping. Later, Adam.